right, guys, I hope that everyone can hear me and everyone can see my screen. Welcome to the Masterclass, the generational gap, leveraging generational diversity on your team. Before we get started, guys, if everyone can mute your audio, so we all don't have to listen to your background noises, that would be great. Also, just kind of wanted to remind you guys to use your time wisely. If you all have any distractions, cell phones, need to close the office door, just anything so that way you all can use this time wisely, that would be great. Before we start, I did want to go ahead and announce our next masterclass. I do this now because I always forget in the end. So you guys can actually visit the bopmasterclass.com. Thomas, one of our coaches, is going to be doing it on legacy businesses. So feel free to visit that and go ahead and get started. All right, well, we are going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Patrice Miles. I'm a coach at Business on Purpose, where we exist to liberate business owners from the chaos of their business so that they can make time for what matters most. So for those of you all that don't know me, my background is in real estate and the home building business in Louisville, Kentucky. I also spent 6 years in Nigeria to help rebuild a hospital alongside Samaritan's Purse and SIM. While I was there, I did see a need for education, and I did start a nonprofit that currently has a school with over 200 children. The name of that nonprofit is Care Africa, and it is located in the bush of Nigeria. I am currently the executive director. I still have maintained that role. And my family and I, we have been back in the States now for 4 years, actually next month. So it's kind of crazy how quick time flies. I am super excited about this masterclass in particular because, as you guys can see, I have several generations living in my own home. So the first thing that I want to ask you all is, what does generational diversity mean to you? I want you all to put your answer in the chat along with your name and where you are from. So again, what does generational diversity mean to you? Put your answer in the chat along with your name and where you are from. I see Chris. Chris, what does generational diversity mean to you and where are you from? Zach in North Carolina? There we go. Henry says a variety of ages. Henry's from Florida. All right. Cindy, difference in generational needs and understanding of life overall. Cindy from Texas, thanks. Got Mindy from Texas, different ages. Somebody from North Carolina, the ability to embrace the old and new knowledge. Love that, Susan. Healing isn't linear. Again, Sarah from Florida. DR Horton, Richmond Hill, Georgia. Chris Fitton, welcome. Anyone else want to put what they feel like generational diversity means to you? Feel free to continue to put that in the chat. Hey, Mark, glad to see you. It makes me think of Robert De Niro movie, The Intern. All right, thanks for the visual. Zachary, generational wealth and legacy, passing on knowledge of growth. Jessica, glad to see you here. Dallas, the opportunity to leverage strengths between years of experience. Love it, love it. Well, these are all great things. Continue to put those in the chat. Guys, the purpose of today's call is that in the next hour, I want each person to walk away with one action item to implement immediately in your business to help bridge the generational gap in your workplace. So Gary Keller says in his book, The One Thing, he says, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So again, I want you to walk away with that one thing. Now, we will get to that one thing by walking through 5 different topics. First, we are going to identify who are today's clashing generations. Now, if you guys are like me, I had heard of Gen X, Gen Z, Pound Millennial, and I really had no clue what that meant or who that was even referring to. So after today, you will know. The second thing is we are going to have a fun time going down memory lane, and we are going to identify, is there really a generational gap? Third, we are going to identify tensions that exist when multiple generations work together. And then fourth, what each generation can bring to the table if they are allowed to, and what can they contribute to the team. And then the fifth is what you can do as a leader or a team member to help bridge the gap. Now, after I share, I then do want to hear from you guys. So be ready to share at the end of this masterclass something that you have seen in your workplace or somebody else's workplace that has helped bridge that generational gap. Now, before we get started, I do need to give Tim Elmore credit. A lot of the stuff that we're going to go over today came from his book, A New Kind of Diversity. So that is something that you guys can definitely take a peek at. All right. So who are today's clashing generations in the workforce? Well, the first one is boomers. They were launched with the return of soldiers from the war. There was a boom of babies because everyone just wanted to return to normal with a spouse, some kids, a dog, and a mortgage. 76.4 million babies were born, the largest born in one generation up to that point. The next one is Gen X, the busters. They were born between 1965 and 82, and they're in that age range of 41 to 58. Now, this generation, they began with the public introduction of birth control as a contraceptive, the Roe versus Wade legislation, and you have a shrinking population, a bust. That's why we call them the busters rather than the boomers. Ultimately, they did not want to be tagged with a nickname, so Gen X just stuck. Then we have Gen Y because Y comes after X, right? But they are called the millennials. 1983 to 2000 is when they were born. They're anywhere from the ages of 23 to 40. In the 1980s and 90s, America recalibrated herself and was recovering from the Vietnam War, Watergate, a gas crisis, failed rescue of hostages. Everyone really started to focus on child safety, self-esteem, and status. They all became huge factors on how parents raised kids. Children became a top priority, and millennials grew into the largest generation in history, about 80 million. Then you have Gen Z. You got it. Z comes after Y. 2001 to 2015 is when they were born, and they are anywhere from the ages of 8 to 22. Now, most of Gen Z will spend their entire lives in the 21st century. Society pivoted again with the dot-com bubble burst, a troubled economy, corporate scandals, and the 9/11 attack, which ignited an era of terrorism, racial unrest, mass shootings, and smart technology, which both connects and disconnects us and fosters mental health issues. They live in a new normal, and some even call them the coronials, as they're now marked by the coronavirus pandemic. So, guys, is there really a generational gap? I mean, over the past 60 years, hasn't every older generation complained about the younger generation? Hasn't everybody's grandpa had that talk about when they were young, they had to walk 5 miles to school in the cold, and a candy bar was a nickel, and everyone had to work for what they wanted, and you never complained about anything or you would get smacked? Isn't this just normal? Well, let's have a little fun walking down memory lane. Let's look at how the world is very different for kids today. The first one is seatbelts. Now, some of you on this call remember cars that didn't even have seatbelts. Others don't remember a time when you didn't see a sign like this that said, "Buckle up, it's the law." It's obviously a good law, but boy, are we safety obsessed now. Most kids, they've never even ridden in the back of a pickup truck because it's far too dangerous. What about childproofing? In the 1960s and 70s, childproofing was simply mom telling you, "Don't touch that or you're going to get smacked." Hazard cleaning products and bottles of pills would just be left out and you just didn't touch them. These days, when you visit someone's house and they have kids and you try to open a cabinet door or a stove, it's like an obstacle course where you have to put your finger this way and then hold something that way and then push it all this way just to make anything work. What about helmets? I didn't even know what a bike helmet was when I was a kid. We were crazy riding bikes and skateboards off ramps that we had built with pieces of plywood and a rock. I actually had a skateboarding accident when I was in 5th grade and was dragged down an entire hill face first, and it was ugly. And it left my nose looking like it does today. But you know what? We had so much fun. Nowadays, kids wear helmets at the dinner table. What about screens? We had 2 TVs growing up, one in the kitchen that was black and white for my mom to watch Perry Mason on while she was cooking dinner. And then we had another one in the family room that we could watch Little House on the Prairie or some family movie all together. Screens were just not a part of life. And so we had to get creative. We had to use our imagination to come up with games and imaginary school classrooms, plays and competitions. We had to make our own fun. What about gaming? Atari had just come out, and the back and forth of a ball landing on a flat moving thing was amazing. As much fun as it was, there was only like a few games to play, and it did get boring pretty quickly. But today, gaming has taken over, and the average person plays 8 to 12 hours of gaming a week. The average person, guys. What about cell phones? They emerged in the 80s as a brick phone and morphed over time to a Star Trek looking device. Now everyone has one, and most certainly every teenager does. Why? For 2 reasons. 1, worrying, and the second, wondering. Parents worry where their kids are and what they're doing, so the device is sort of a tether to keep them on the line. It's really not a bad idea, except we became paranoid. The cell phone morphed into a smartphone, and we can track and see everything now. What about trouble at school? Back in the day, if you got in trouble at school, you would get in trouble again at home. Today, if a kid gets in trouble, parents are marching down to the school and confronting the teacher, normally always siding with their child. Parents are buddies with their kids now, and they tend to believe them over an adult. What about indoors versus outdoors? Almost my entire elementary and middle school years were spent outside, especially during the summer. We would eat breakfast and leave, and we'd be gone until mom called us in for dinner. We would wander wherever we wanted, even up to the local gas station to buy candy and a soda with cash money. Kids growing up now, yeah, right, freedom to wander around. Better to stay inside where it's safe unless there is an adult to supervise in a fenced-in yard. Guys, the generational gap does exist. And there is currently 4 generations working together. It reminds me of Nigeria sometimes because it's like we're living in a different culture. When you have generations that grew up one way and others that grew up a completely different way, and they all work on a team together, it can feel like you're living in a different country with different customs, different rules, and different languages. And this can cause a lot of tension in the workplace. So, what are some tensions that exist in the workplace?
At work, I set up a weekly meeting so me and my manager can stay on the same page. Why? Like seriously, just do your job. Why waste time talking about it? At work, I set up a group chat so we can all talk 24/7 and discuss things. Also, email, my gifts weren't working, so why can't you just talk to your manager on Snap when you need something?
Love it. All right. So what are some tensions that exist when multiple generations work closely together? So let's look at life paradigm first, how the different generations view life. Well, the boomers, they want it better. Gen X, they just want you to keep it real. Millennials, life is a cafeteria. I get to pick and choose what I want. And Gen Z is I am coping and just hoping. What about technology? Boomers, they're just trying to master it. Gen X, they are employing it. Millennials, they enjoy it. And Gen Z's just trying to figure out how to hack it. What about ethics? For boomers, it's very self-based. Gen X, it's media-based. Millennials, I'm going to shop around. And Gen Z, it's very elastic. Here's a big one, view of authority. That could cause some tensions in the workplace. Boomers, they want to replace them. Gen X, they're just enduring you. Millennials, they want to choose who their authority is going to be. And guess what? Gen Z, they don't even need you. What about the role of work? For boomers, work is the central focus. It's their identity. Gen X, it's just an irritant that they have to work. Millennials, it is a place to serve. And Gen X, work is just a hobby. What about relationships? For boomers, very limited but useful. Gen X, very central and caring. Millennials, relationships are unlimited. It can be anywhere in the world that I have friends. And then Gen Z, utilitarian. What about their sense of identity? Boomers, I am valuable. Gen X, I'm self-sufficient. Millennials, I'm awesome. And Gen Z is I am fluid. What about their view of the future? For boomers, they're going to create it. Gen X is a little skeptical. And millennials, YOLO. Yes, guys, I had to look this up too. You only live once, YOLO. And then FOMO for Gen Z is fear of missing out. So those are just a few of the tensions that it can exist. So guys, what do we do? How can we work together? First, we have to identify what each generation brings to the table. What do they bring to the team? For boomers, they've been around a long time and they've garnered a lot of wisdom and insight, giving them much to contribute to the team. As you manage or work alongside boomers, there are many gifts that they can contribute to a team. First of all, they are seasoned veterans. They started working 3 to 5 decades ago, and they have extensive experience. They have amazing stories from their journey in the workplace, and we can learn from them. They also have a huge awareness of pitfalls to avoid. They have likely performed similar tasks to the roles on your team, and they might just have some insight on what they have seen work and what has not. They are huge encouragers. They've probably experienced many failures in their personal and work life, and they can be a huge encourager for anyone who has failed and needs to keep moving forward. They are great mentors and coaches. This is one of the biggest assets I feel a boomer has to offer. Even a boomer without great communication skills has pearls to offer the younger generation through mentoring and coaching. What about Gen X? They are now at the peak of their careers. Most of them are midlife and just beyond, and they've been promoted into management positions. What do they bring to the team? Well, authenticity. They grew up in a difficult period of the 60s and 70s and saw leaders hide behind facades. As a result, they grew distrustful of that artificial style and decided that they didn't want to be fake, and they have brought that into the workplace. They have little time for platitudes or pretension on the team. They also bring balance. They introduced work-life balance after growing up watching their parents marry their careers and find their sole identity in their careers. They were left at home to fend for themselves, so they desire balance between home and work, which is a very healthy thing for your team. They are very resourceful. Gen X learned to become resourceful as kids since adults were not around much of the time. They became talented at figuring out how to get a job done with very few resources, and this can be a huge asset for your team. They have pragmatic wisdom. They express their thoughts easily and they have no problem asking questions. They often will challenge the status quo and they can offer practical solutions on a team. The last one is mediators. They are the middle generation in the workforce right now between the boomers and Gen Y. They remember what it was like to be the low man on the totem pole as they have recently made it to the leadership role. They can be a huge asset on the team to mediate between the different levels and generations as a leader. They play an important role between pessimism and idealism, and that is why I think one of the greatest assets for Gen X is mediators. The next one, the millennials. They currently make up half of the workforce right now, guys. They matured in a day of digital customization and they see life as one big cafeteria where they choose from a plethora of options and can personalize their purchases, their playlists, their lifestyles. Opportunity trumps loyalty for millennials, guys. Let me say that again. Opportunity trumps loyalty for millennials. So finding their fit on your team is critical. What do they contribute to the team? Well, number one, confidence. Most of the millennials grew up in a culture where children were a top priority. Trophies were handed out just for playing, and they were told they were amazing just for making their beds. This has other generations labeling them entitled. And this entitlement allows them to enter the workforce with confidence and high expectations, which if they are given guardrails, this can be a huge asset to a team. They bring energy because of their confidence. They bring energy to the team. They bring tech sense. They grew up with cell phones and computers. They understand technology very well and can find ways to leverage it for marketing and commerce in your organization. They are collaborators. These young professionals experience school and extracurricular activities in communities. They participated in academic assignments on a team. They played soccer on a team. They formed a study group and often went on group dates. They are used to collaborating and they love working in teams. The last one is mission-minded. Because this generation grew up watching social media posts go viral and seeing protests from movements that changed politics, they are aware of their influence and long to feel that what they do matters and that their job makes a difference. They desire to see change in the workplace, and they will bring energy and optimism to the mission of your company if you include them. What about Gen Z? Well, Gen Z as early as 2 years old was using technology that was virtual and smart. They are the most overwhelmed and anxious generation, with reports of 1 in 4 having considered suicide. Yet they have the savviest and most entrepreneurial generation that we think yet. 72% of high school graduates are saying that they're going to create their own startup. So what do they contribute? Well, a do-it-yourself disposition. Growing up with a phone in their hand, searching and finding answers on their own instead of waiting for an adult to provide the information, they can figure out how to launch a project, and this can be a huge asset to your team. They are cause-oriented. Their connectivity to multiple social media platforms and worldwide news has fostered a greater sense of tolerance for all lifestyles than the older generations had. If you make them aware of a social or cultural need that your business wants to be a part of, they can be passionate and work tirelessly to solve a problem or to serve people. There are also social media cunning. These social creatures have been on multiple social media platforms since middle school for the time equivalent of a full-time job, and they multitask on up to 5 screens a day. Use them to help your organization figure out ways to monetize on this. The last is that they bring a marketable perspective. Their generation is so culturally different than any other, and they will soon be a very large percentage of the consumers of the products that we sell. So they can bring a fresh perspective to marketing, especially to their own generation. So, Boomers bring mentoring to the organization. Gen X brings mediation between the generations. Millennials can keep us focused on the mission, while Gen Z brings a marketable, fresh perspective to the team. Knowing what we know about generational differences and possible tensions, what can you do as a leader or a team member to help bridge the gap? Well, number 1, set clear expectations. Tension is created by the distance between expectations and reality. Let me say that again. Tension is created by the distance between expectations and reality. Now, if I tell my husband I'm going to be home at 7 p.m. at night and I arrive at 7:10 p.m., no big deal, right? But if it's 10 p.m., we're probably going to need to have a discussion. It isn't because he can't live without me for an additional 3 hours. It's because an expectation was set. He was expecting me at 7 p.m. Are the expectations set for your company's vision, mission, and core values? Habakkuk 2:2 says, write the vision down so those that hear it may run with it. Does everyone know where your company is going? And is it being shouted from the rooftops during team meetings, staff reviews, client interactions, and quarterly vision days? No one should ever forget why they are getting out of bed every morning and coming to work. Are there clear expectations of everyone's job role? Does everyone on your team know their role? Do they know what is expected of them because it's in writing? Do they know how they are supposed to dress for appointments, how they're supposed to respond to clients, how they are supposed to work? What about your hiring process? It doesn't matter if you're hiring Gen X, Y, or Z. Are you following a hiring process that allows time with these generational candidates to share your vision, mission, and core values with them, to go over the job role in detail from what they will work, where they will work, office or virtual? How will they communicate with clients, email, text, or phone? How they will communicate with you and the other team members? And can they handle that? Because if that's too much, tell me now, not 3 months after I've been paying you and training you. The second way to bridge the gap is to simply talk about it. When expectations are not being met, tensions arise. When I came home at 10 p.m. at night and I told my husband I'd be home at 7 p.m., a conversation needed to happen. If I just walked in the door and said, hey, and made a sandwich and put on my PJs and jumped into bed to finish up watching Netflix, and I never said what happened, tensions would start to rise as my husband would wonder, what in the world was I doing? It is the same in the workplace, guys. So talk about it. Now, how do we do that without making everyone uncomfortable? Well, if you're in leadership, check-ins with your staff. Through routine weekly or bi-weekly check-ins that are scheduled, not spontaneous, but scheduled and intentional with questions that you use over and over again, you will be able to talk about it and address any tensions before they marinate and cause internal and external conflict. For team members, it's your responsibility to be honest in those check-ins. When you're asked, what blind spots do you feel like the organization is missing? Or what frustrations or obstacles are you facing right now? Be honest, guys. Don't just say I'm good or I'm fine so that an uncomfortable conversation doesn't have to happen. You guys matter and you are a part of the team. So make your contribution so everyone can benefit from what you have in your head. The third way that you can help bridge the gap is to create a culture that everyone wants to be a part of. Now, this is where I want you guys to jump back in. I want to hear from you all. What have you done or seen in the workplace that has helped create a culture that every generation felt they could be a part of? So again, open up your chat windows, guys, and just throw out anything that you all have seen, again, in your workplace or someone else's, or even something that you've heard of that has helped create a culture that every generation felt they could be a part of. No one has figured out a way yet. Oh, here we go, Jessica. Quarterly culture and vision days. We bring everyone in, enjoy a meal together, and then do a group training. Fantastic. So again, we're sharing that vision so everybody knows where we're headed. And then we're having a meal together so we can have some team. We got crew lunches, team meals. We have monthly innovation meeting that the entire office participates in. Community service activities, love it. Group training and challenges. Very purposeful training on specific topics, always reflecting on vision, mission, and culture. Zachary says activities. Jessica, it allows them to hear from the different perspectives on how they handle things. Love it, guys. These are all fantastic ideas. And one more thing that we at BOP feel helps bridge the generational gap is the cultural calendar. The cultural calendar celebrates the generational gap, not just through birthdays and work anniversaries, but company milestones, community service events as a team, scheduled mentoring and training sessions, and quarterly vision days to continue reminding everyone of their purpose and why the company exists. All right, guys, well, it's action time. Yes, I am a coach, so I, of course, want to know what action you are going to take. So what is the one thing that you are going to implement in your business after this call? So get out a piece of paper, write it down. What is the one thing that you can do this week to help bridge the gap with the different generations on your team? If you'd love to post it in the chat, I, of course, would love to know what your one thing is. I see we have someone else that mentioned group teams with intentional diversity. But yes, what is the one thing that you can take away from today to implement this week to help bridge that gap? Now, we all know that there probably will be some obstacles. So what will be the biggest enemy to keep that one thing from happening? Well, the one thing I hear over and over again in my coaching time is that time is always the enemy to keep us from doing that one thing. So we talked about a lot today. We talked about vision. We talked about mission, core values, job roles, hiring process, check-ins, and a cultural calendar. And that is a lot of stuff. If you are a one-on-one coaching client of ours, I am sure that you are currently working diligently with your coach to create and implement these things. So I hope that this has encouraged you to keep on improving those tools. So even if you have these tools in place, I pray that you continue to improve on them in collaboration. Now, for those of you who are not in one-on-one coaching with us, one of our coaches has volunteer minute time blocks in his schedule to build out any of the tools that we have mentioned today. We want to see you liberated from chaos, and building out tools to help bridge that generational gap will start that process. So make sure to scan the QR code with your phone and sign up for a 30-minute session with Brent to help build out any of the tools that we've mentioned today. That is the end of our masterclass, guys. We're actually going to hang on, and Brent's on the call too, and have just a little Q&A. So if anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask any questions or turn your video on, that would be great. Hey, Brent.
Hey, good stuff. That was awesome. Hey, Jessica.
Hey, I wanted to share. I was just at Scott's training in Dallas, and he talked a little bit about this, and he challenged us in the class to ask our millennials their #1 song on their Spotify. And I did that, and instantly I got responses.
That's awesome. I love it.
And it's really great, like icebreaker to see. And he was right. They responded right away. And they're like, what's yours?
So there you go, guys. Go ahead and start asking everybody that you work with, what's their #1 song on Spotify? That'll start some conversations, I'm sure. Anyone else?
Jessica, what was your #1 song on Spotify?
It's so weird. I am a millennial, but I'm right at the cusp of 83. So I think I missed Spotify. I'm still hanging out on like YouTube and Pandora. I'm like an old millennial. That's what my young millennials told me.
Several people have asked about the recording for the webinar. And yes, if you all are registered for this webinar, Jesse will send out the recording afterwards for you guys. All right. Well, does anybody else have any questions or anything else that they want to share? Otherwise, we'll let you all get back to the grind.
I just would like to say one thing.
Yes.
I am definitely a baby boomer. It's been around for a while. And I went through many, many years on the workplace where you were never allowed to speak about God or scripture or anything like that. And I just want to say that I truly appreciate the Christian aspect of this webinar, because in my view, and a lot of people, you hear a lot of people say it today, that a lot of what's missing and why people are so hopeless in this world today is because that God aspect is missing from their lives. They don't have hope and something to hold on to. So to even see this on the workplace is very encouraging to me, and I'm thankful for that.
Amen, Cindy. Thank you so much. Where are you from?
I'm actually from Minnesota.
Okay.
I moved to Texas 2 years ago because I needed some conservatism in my life. Thank you.
Very good. And what do you do?
I'm a bookkeeper and administrative specialist for Quantum Building Solutions. It's building automation, commercial building automation. So,
well, welcome to the BOP community.
Thank you.
Cindy, what part of Texas are you in?
I'm in East Plano.
Just
a little north of Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in Rockwall.
Oh, very close. Yes, we have some friends that live in Rockwall.
Yeah. Awesome.
Oh, yeah, I really enjoyed that part of this. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share about generational gaps, anything they've implemented or going to be implementing? All right. Well, thank you guys for attending this masterclass, and hopefully we'll see you next month.